start your day. Now go and tell all the neighbors, yeah. Then crank up the radio. There's infotainment, brilliant to get you on your way. Wake up and start your day with Jimmy Lakey.
Oh, there's nothing more glorious than to hear your song, your name being sung by the Jimmy Lakey Mass Choir. It's a pleasure to be here with you. For many years, I get to hear every morning my name being sung. I hope people use that as their ringtone. If you don't have it, maybe we could send it out. I'm hoping you do. I thought about putting it as my alarm every morning when I wake up, bright and early, that I could hear the choir singing my name. I think that'd be a fantastic addition to the alarm clock. I should, Delilah, work on that. Make it my alarm clock. All right, Aiden, one of you hipster youth, figure it out how to do it. I don't know how to do it. All right, welcome to the program. Wednesday morning, November the 5th day of November, year of our Lord, 2025. Lots of great guests today. James Bradley's going to be on the show. You don't want to miss that. Anybody remember the iconic photo of raising the flag at Iwo Jima? Well, it was James Bradley's father who was in that photo, and James Bradley has lived an extraordinary life. The ways he's traveled and been about and accomplished things, and also a New York Times bestselling author. He's written a new book. We'll talk to James Bradley coming up. And again, his dad was the corpsman who raised the flag at Iwo Jima. So we'll talk to James Bradley at 8:30. That'll take us into the Veterans Day weekend. Also at 45, that means at 8:45 Mountain, 10:45 Eastern, we're going to have John Lake on the program about, he's come on the program a couple of times. We talked about the world of big pharma and vaccination. So we'll talk about that with John Lake coming up on the program as well. I got a question of the day that I think all of you are going to want to sound off on. We'll introduce that here in just a moment. But right now, let's read some headlines. What do you say? Election night observations, that's coming up as well. But let's read some other headlines. Tonight's a full moon. A lot of folks are trying to figure out how to make moon water. That is a trending search on the Googles. How do you make moon water? You say, what is moon water? I have no freaking clue, is what I told producer Chad. But the full moon tonight, as some of our nurses call it, job security night. I remember my father, who I've told you worked as a mortician by trade, by career for most of his life. He hated working in the mortuary they always knew that when it was a full moon, it was going to go kind of crazy. I bet some of you have some tales if you're in the medical industry about ER, about what's going to happen on the full moon. But one way you can celebrate the full moon tonight across America by jumping on the moon water trend. During the last full moon, how to make moon water was the top trending how to make search on the Googles. And if you're not sure what it is, brace yourself. It's pretty dumb, honestly. Moon water is simply pure water sealed in a container, left outside to charge with the energy by the light of the full moon. And that's moon water. The benefits are you get water. It's hydration, but supposedly it makes you feel closer to Mother Gaia. I don't know who Mother Gaia is, but it makes you feel closer to Mother. Get you in touch with the seasonal flow of nature. Do the seasonal flow hand motion. And you can also see noticeable signs in your life that are unexplainable. It's not brand new. The idea has been kicking around for a while now, but whatever the reason, it's gone viral this year. Every time there's a full moon, people are filling up a jar with water and letting it sit and reflect under the moon. And then drinking the water and saying, wow, that was fantastic. So that's what moon water is. So what's funny is that's all it is. And people are Googling, how do you make moon water? Well, that's how you do it. You put it in there and let it charge up, supposedly by the moon. So there is that story out there as well. Let me get to the election last night. Headline from the election. One of the headlines that caught my attention in my show prep was this. Ben Wedden, who writes for justthenews.com, has a headline. And it's very interesting headline to me because it says election night bloodbath sends warning to GOP for midterms. There was a simple, in short, no silver lining for the GOP Tuesday evening whatsoever. The Republican lost every major contest in Tuesday night's election in what appears to be a clear indicator of voters' dissatisfaction with the governance of President Donald Trump. Let me just say, I'm going to call BS on a lot of this crap. We had two states that had statewide elections. No other state had really statewide elections. You had some municipal races, some municipalities, big cities were electing mayors, but the only two states that had statewide races, governor, mayor, etc., that was Virginia, attorney general, that was Virginia and New Jersey. That's it. These are purple to blue states. They did trend for Donald Trump, but traditionally these are Democrat blue states. And so for anybody to say, look, a blue state acted like a blue state acts, a blue city acts like a blue city acts, it's BS to say that that's some kind of that's some kind of a notice on Donald Trump. It would have been a miracle had any of these Republicans won. It would have been a miracle when Glenn Youngkin won the governorship of Virginia. It was a miracle that he won that, and he won that because there was a lot of anger at that time about school boards and what had been happening, been taught in the schoolhouse. But other than that, Youngkin was not going to win the governorship of Virginia. So I would like to call BS and ask you this question. There is not a thing last night. I was watching Fox News, sitting by my fire pit in the backyard of the grounds of the gardens of the House of Lakey, and I was having a cigar and I was watching the Fox News last night a little bit. I was scanning through the shows that I normally watch, and I finally turned it off and went to some documentary because it was nonstop news about two states, about races that have absolutely nothing to do with you and I. I know you were been told because they want clicks and they want media that you should be shocked that a Comey was going to become the mayor of New York City. Why should you be shocked? There is not much difference other than party registration than somebody like a Cuomo and somebody like a Mamdani. Yes, Mamdani does have a couple of other little quirks that he wants to do, but Cuomo was a tyrant during COVID, and he was seemingly well liked by the people and polled very well when he got into the race. So I want to just tell you, stop the frenzy. And if you're listening to a talk show and they're overanalyzing the nation based on elections that were really localized in New Jersey or Virginia, you need to turn the dang news station off, because this is what the 24-hour news cycle does. They need to keep you agitated. They need to keep you in a frenzy. And if you will pause and reflect, if you sat last night watching hours or even minutes of election results, shame on you. You need to get a freaking life and learn to have a life and humanity balance and turn that crap off. There is not anything in that election last night that has any direct effect on most of your lives. Unless you live in New Jersey, unless you live in Virginia, there is nothing that really pertains to you. New Jersey and Virginia are not signs of the trends of America. They have been blue before Trump. They veered a little bit towards Trump, a little bit just with the cult of personality and the strength of his personality, but they're blue states. These are states. Virginia is a state. Part of it is overrun with government workers who are for the bureaucracy. They're for the deep state. They're part of the deep state. Some of them are unemployed now. So what makes you think we should be surprised? Yes, it would have been wonderful if Winsome Earl Sears would have won that election. It would have been fantastic. She's a nice lady. It would have been great if Citarelli would have won that race in New Jersey. But he didn't, and they didn't. And it should not be shocking. And what you saw last night does not at all determine what you may see in the midterm election. Now, traditionally, an incumbent president has a tough time in the midterm election. We're a year away from that, and maybe that will be the case. But whatever happens next November has nothing to do with what happened last night, and what happened last night that the national media wanted us to be watching with bated breath and watching and saying, oh, that's just amazing wins, amazing victories, amazing losses. It has nothing to do with you and I. These were not, there were no other U.S. Senate seats. There were no House of Representatives seats. There was nothing to change the power in Washington, D.C. You had a couple of big cities that have been overrun by terrorists and Antifa and have been lawless since the days of George Floyd, if not before. Talking about Minneapolis, of course, New York City as well. You're talking about Portland. These are cities that have already gone to hell in a handbasket. And so if Democrats win those cities, why is that a bad sign, a bad omen for Republicans? Knock it off. This has nothing to do with it. I find this, and I hate to say it, one of the most disappointing stories or headlines that I've ever seen on justthenews.com, because these were not even national races. These were localized, statewide races, and nobody gives a rat's ass. Sorry for the word ass there, but nobody cares if Nobody gives a rat's patootie as to whether or not the attorney general of the state of Colorado is a Democrat or Republican. Nobody in the state of Virginia, outside the state of Virginia, really cares what it's a Democrat or Republican attorney general. It really is just unbelievable, but yet it is a stupidity on display to show you exactly how spun up into a frenzy that people want you to get. And I just got bored with it because I'm like, honestly, I don't give a real care about this. Do I wish New York City would come to its senses and not elect a communist? Yes. But I also wish that they would have thrown Andrew Cuomo out on his ear for his tyrannical juxtapositioning and trying to be the counter programmer during the days of COVID, talking about how strict he was going to be and how awful it was. It's just unbelievable, the media coverage that has gone into what happened last night and trying to pin it all on Donald Trump or this was a sign of things to come. It's just not that way. Colorado where I live, is a purplish blue state, right? It's not necessarily going to be a referendum on Donald John Trump if John Hickenlooper or Michael Bennett or some other commie that we have or that we have in the U.S. Senate or House goes back. That's not a breaking news story. It's not a trend about what's happening about Donald Trump. It is a trend about what the state of Colorado has become. And last night was just the following and the resyncing of the trend of the state of New Jersey and the state of Virginia. That doesn't mean we can take the midterms next November for granted. It means there is a lot to do. But last night had nothing to do with the next November. This was an off-year election. And I guess because it's Donald John Trump, they wanted to make it something, or they needed some topics for you to click content on. And I don't really care. I've talked about this before. I don't want Mamdani to be the mayor. I don't want Cuomo to be the mayor as well. Either one are bad for what I stand for. And so to heck with both of them. And so I want to tell you to take a deep breath today. And as you hear the over-analysis on the radio and you hear the over-hype about what happened last night, and you read places even at Just the News, which I'm kind of disappointed they'd run a headline, to pretend that the elections in Virginia and New Jersey, which are blue states, staying blue is a bad sign for Donald Trump and the Republicans. No, it's not. It means those states are doing what those states have always been doing. And yes, Donald Trump did have a little surge in some of these states, but that was a once in a lifetime, once in a decade type thing. That's not necessarily the states trending that way. That was a rejection of Kamala Harris. That was a rejection of Joe Biden. That was a protest vote for a lot of people, and just get over yourself. So anyway, I want to get that out there. My election night observations are suck it up. To call that an election night bloodbath for the Republicans, I think it shows you're into hyperbole. I think it shows that you're into not a real understanding about what the rest of America looks like. Most of you out there, some of you are in Wyoming, some of you are in Arkansas, some of you are in Missouri, some of you are all over the places. Some of you are all over the country, and what happened last night has nothing to do with the future of next year's election. This was a municipal election. This was a statewide election, and these are states that already these are municipalities and/or states that already had been blue, and there's nothing else to see here. So, suck it up, Buttercup. If you hear those people on the iHeart signal out there, the syndicated yappers and making this a big deal, turn the station, put on some country music, put on a podcast, and knock it off and stop working yourself up into a tizzy and soiling yourself that last night was some kind of a bloodbath. It wasn't, and anybody who tries to make it that way, I think, is a fool, because I think they just misread it, and I think they're just trying to game you into feeling some reaction. And that's the media's job. If they can keep you agitated, if they can keep you furious, if they can keep you upset about things, then they're going to be able to keep you watching, because you're going to want to hear more of it. It's kind of like if they can make, you remember that when you were a kid, you had the tooth that was loose and you'd play with it with your tongue and you'd push it and it would hurt, but it hurt so good and it just kept hurting. And sometimes you get close to tears, but it's still, you played with it. That's what they need you to do. They need you to feel the pain and keep pushing on it. And that will keep you entertained on their stations. So there's my election night observation. If you disagree with me, feel free to comment on the chat rooms, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Rumble, all the platforms we're on several Facebook feeds, Rumbles, etc. So comment, and it shows up right here in the studio. But Ben Wedden, I don't know who he is. He writes for justthenews.com, which is a really great source for news. But I think this is a dishonest and misrepresentation of what exactly happened last night. All right, moon water. Some of you commented on the moon water. People are looking for it. Jim says he heard that the magnesium citrate also creates the type of moon water. I'm not sure what that means either. Magnesium citrate. Delilah, pull up your chemistry book and find out what that means. Good morning, RJ says from Arkansas. Good morning to you. Yeah, the moon water. I've never heard of the moon water, but it's trending now. Rich says, bring on the moonshine instead of the moon water. Jeff jumps in here on the YouTube page, says, happy communist socialist winning hump day, and now watch the handouts run out. Big deal. It doesn't affect me. What these states will do or what these cities do are the same thing they've been doing. It's not like Minneapolis elected a communist. So what? They've had Democrats. Did you know in the last several presidential elections, the Communist Party of the United States has not listed their own candidate because they said the Democrat nominee checks all the boxes? That's so to say that there's some great difference. Oh, they should have elected Cuomo. No, if Cuomo were running for president, it is very likely that the Communist Party of America or the Democrat Socialists of America would not run a candidate. It has been done before in recent history that they do not run candidates because they approve of the Democrat nominee. Again, these headlines are hyperbolic. I think they're clickbaiting. I think it's really bad political analysis, and I think my analysis is better that when a blue state does what a blue state does, you shouldn't say that it's a bad sign for the red state. And when a red state does what a red state does, you shouldn't say that it's some bad thing. Oh, my God, the blue states are under threat. No, everybody's doing what they're doing. That's why people live in those states, because they live with like-minded people. By the way, this time last year, the day after the election, and of course 2016 as well, the Democrats were going crazy. It's a Marxist revolution. Anybody watch Republicans last night? Watch the election? Mom Dami won. Mom Dami the commie. Winsome Earl Sears, nice lady, didn't win. Would have been a miracle if she did. Citarelli, in my mind, I was like, why would the New Jersey Republicans run the same candidate? This was his third time, I believe, to run for governor. You know what that tells me? That tells me that there's nobody else in New Jersey going, I really want to do this one. And maybe they do, but New Jersey, they're just throwing the same guy out there. It would be like if the Democrats continue to throw Kamala Harris out there after she got beat. You don't get to do that. Maybe you get to run twice, but 3 different times. So the fact that Citarelli had been nominated and defeated a few other times should show that the third time's not necessarily going to be a charm, because it is a blue state. And so there's so many signs that you can look at and say, I'm not worried about this at all. And yet they want to keep you very worried. But I do want you to also note, especially some of you lingering leftists out there in the chat rooms that watch this show and stew and you get all upset. Notice how we're reacting today. Okay, Democrats won a state. Democrats elected a communist. Democrats elected that commie. It's okay. It doesn't bother me. Don't tread on me, but that you elected them in your municipality. You get to live with the fruit of your votes, and that's what you're going to get to. I don't think we're threatening to shut down the government. I don't think I've heard any Republicans say we're going to riot and start calling them names. Just not have a communist is communist. That's what they are, and just accept it. In other words, the way that we can accept a so-called defeat, and yes, it was in theory a defeat, but it was not a surprising defeat last night. The way we accepted defeat shows a much more strong base in reality, and I think that's what bothers me is some of these. What bothers me is some of these news pundits are trying to get you into a frenzy and think that this was something crazy. And the media fury is not necessarily something that reflects reality of what you should be. All right, good to have you here on the show. That's my thought on the election. Give me your thoughts. Have you noticed how Republicans and commentators are reacting to the election last night? We're just not that. I know the New York-centric media is, the Virginia, Washington, D.C. media is all up in a tizzy. They're trying to tell you what this means for the national trends. The these people live in a bubble, the same way a lot of politicians do. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer live 3 minutes apart from each other. The power block of the Democrat Party, they live in a bubble. And all the media that's forcing this story down your throat is living in a bubble. And let me tell you, what happened in last night's election in Virginia and in New Jersey has nothing to do with any of us. It's not going to affect us. It doesn't matter. The worst, I guess the only response I've seen negatively came from Donald John Trump, who said that he may have to cut off aid to New York. Well, that could be true. If Mamdani's not spending the aid or federal funds that we're sending to New York City for the right reason, or he's milking it away for some socialist cause, then that's the federal authorities, the federal government's right to do that. It also makes you kind of scratch your head and say how they brag that New York City is such a great city and it's one of the largest economies on the planet, and it's just such a fantastic place, right? It's such a hellhole that they take money from your pocket in Arkansas, money from your pocket in California, money from your pocket in Arizona, money from your pocket in Texas, and here in Colorado, and they put it all up into Washington, D.C., and they have to give those lame communists in New York City federal funding. And I know all cities get it, but you have to ask yourself, why are we helping New York City with their federal funding anyway? I understand there's roads and bridges, et cetera, and I get it, but I think at some point we not only have to look at the not Snapchat, you can look at that too. Look at the Snap shutdown, and people are realizing how many millions of people, 6 in 10 people are on welfare, food stamps. That's a troublesome number. And I think we also have to look at how much we were sending to New York City, how much are we sending to these big cities? Because when they send it to a city, whether if you're sending money to Denver for whatever federal highway funds, guess what? Thank you, Mississippi. You paid for it. And that's one of the problems that we have in our society today, is that we are sending money out to where we don't need to be sending money out. All right, a couple of more news headlines. We talked about the moon water. Comey's playing the victim card, and also we find out that Comey says I'll give you a quick run on both the stories about 3 minutes away from our first guest of the morning. We have the Comey boomerang ex-director confronted with personal emails notes after he played the victim card, says the headline. James Comey played the victim card in fighting his indictment, but the strategy has boomeranged now that prosecutors and his old agencies have released an avalanche of evidence showing that the ex-deputy director hoped to see Hillary Clinton cheer and cheered on media leaks, and he claimed he did not sanction. He wrote emails and notes that directly conflicted with his congressional testimony. Part of the unflattering portrait that's now come out about Jim Comey, prosecutors revealed on Monday of this week, came from long-hidden files that FBI Director Kash Patel found in burn bags, secret storage rooms at the Bureau's headquarters. The evidence includes proof that James Comey used a private email account to conduct FBI matters, including media strategy with a top lieutenant. At the same time, his agency was probing Clinton for improperly using her own private email. Comey wrote in one such email, quote, "Perhaps you can make him smarter," trying to influence a New York reporter about his coverage of the email scandal for Clinton. So James Comey was saying, I'm a victim, I did nothing wrong, and yet all of his emails say, no, you were a political hack. There's one more story, and it goes along with that Comey had the burn bags. Just the News has this story here. The FBI has launched an investigation after finding classified information tied to baseless Trump-Russia's collusion saga stashed in burn bags, with the Department of Justice releasing some of the hidden records as part of its prosecution of fired Bureau Chief James Comey. The FBI launched the preliminary investigation into the burn bag saga back in July, according to opening electronic communication made public. The Bureau said the classified information was stashed away in a room at the FBI headquarters and was related to Crossfire Hurricane and also FBI inquiries into President Trump and his allies. So James Comey attempted to play the victim card and say this is a political persecution, and he was a straight-laced lawman. Instead, in burn bags that never made it to the incinerator, they're finding emails and documents that James Comey was saying one thing publicly as the FBI director, but he was privately on a private email saying other things, including trying to get the New York Times to report better on Hillary Clinton, and also how he was perpetrating the lies that came through Crossfire Hurricane and the Russian collusion scandal. All right, we're going to also hit Jellly Roll in just a moment. Kraft mac and cheese, we're going to talk about that, and Oreo cookies. How's that a tie-in? Stand by. I'll get to all that. The story about Jellly Roll, the musical genius that he is. Can we say a genius? I like him. And mac and cheese and Oreos. All these three stories coming up in just a moment. But right now, I want to welcome in the New York Times best-selling author. His writing is great. His stories, his novels are fantastic. But I just find his own personal story quite fantastic as well. And his name is James Bradley, and we welcome him into the program. If I can get to the right button on my screen here. There we go, the right button on my screen. James Bradley, he's author of a new book called Precious Freedom, a novel. And we welcome Mr. Bradley into the show now. I got to get to the right screen. It's my bad. James Bradley, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I wish I could look good in a hat.
Oh, you could. I'll loan you mine anytime you want to. And actually, I wish I could look good in a hat too. So that's we both have the same problem. James, first of all, I give the proper introduction here in front of me. You have a fantastic just life story. Your father was one of the corpsmen that raised the flag at Iwo Jima, and you went on to become a New York Times best-selling author. You've caddied for Vince Lombardi. You've just done some crazy things in your own life. But I'd like to kind of talk about that moment in your life where you realized, oh, that's my dad in that famous photo. How did that story get passed down to you? That your dad was raising the flag at Iwo Jima, and it became an iconic photo of WW2.
You know, if you look at the photo of the flag raising, half those guys died, and they died pretty horribly. And my dad was a corpsman. And so my dad's best friend was tortured to death. He's right here, Ralph Ignatowski, 3 days of torture underground. So it wasn't a picture of heroism to my dad. My dad never spoke about it. That's the point of Flags of Our Fathers. Steven Spielberg and Clint Eastwood did the movie Flags of Our Fathers. And you'll see that when my father died, my mom did not know what happened to him on Iwo Jima. I went out and spent 5 years researching. I'm the one that told my mother, who slept with my dad for 47 years in the marital bed, what happened in Iwo Jima. That's how secret it was. And I found out how they won. But when I was a kid, when I was 13, I saw my dad, Iwo Jima John Bradley, put my brother on a bus to go to a Marine boot camp to go to Vietnam. And so there was a Marine from Iwo Jima, and they won on Iwo Jima. He puts his son on a Marine Corps bus. His son comes back 2 years later, 40 pounds lighter, almost died, had been given the last rites, and we lost in Vietnam. So I went back to Vietnam many years later to figure out I'm in the same family, same bloodline. How come the Marines won on Iwo Jima and they lost in Vietnam? And that's this book, Precious Freedom.
Let's dive into it. You're a number one New York Times bestselling author, and now you have the Precious Freedom. It's a novel about Vietnam. It's the story of a 19-year-old named Chip Zobel enlisting in the Marines, government called to defend democracy in South Vietnam. Off he goes to battle. How much of the story of Chip Zobel is based on what you know about your brother?
A lot, but it's based on hundreds of interviews with Marines. And the Vietnamese side is based on hundreds of interviews with the Vietnamese that took me, I spent 10 years in Vietnam, not researching Vietnam, but living in Vietnam I lived next to a jail, a prison that we ran there for 2 years, that was never reported. So I lived with the Vietnamese, and I walked out to the battle sites. And I learned how they had been taught. See, the name of the book is Precious Freedom. And why? Because I was told over and over by the Vietnamese that, yes, the Americans killed my father, burned down my house, shooting at me. But Uncle Ho said nothing is more precious than freedom. So the Vietnamese were not fighting for communism. That's what we were told, that they were communists fighting for communism. And I went to Vietnam and they were like, I was 15 years old. I didn't know communism, democracy, that, we didn't talk like that, Mr. Bradley. An American came in my yard, shot my dad in the head, and that's all I had to know, and I went to the forest and I got trained in these methods. What I found out is that the Vietnamese did not accidentally win that war. That's the American narrative. We could have won if only we didn't make mistakes. But no, the Vietnamese had a plan called People's War that was based on 2000. Jimmy, the Vietnamese are the only country in the world that's beaten the French, Americans, Japanese, and Chinese and Mongols.
Wow.
They're the winningest army in the 20th century. The number one general of the 20th century in terms of wins, in terms of people underneath, is not Eisenhower or MacArthur. It's a Vietnamese general. And I didn't know any of this. We're not told this through the Walter Cronkite, Ken Burns vision.
Let's talk about this character that you portray after interviewing a lot of folks that did go to Vietnam. What was the reaction? What is the reaction? Obviously, it was a hotbed of conflict here in the United States, rioting in the streets, protesting in the streets, the peace movement, etc. here in America. How did that affect Chip, your character in the book, and how did it affect those people you researched? A torn nation, a non-unified nation, and they're out trying to defend that nation, but the nation's divided. What
Chip doesn't realize at the time, and what I did not realize, is, see, in this conversation right now, we're saying there was a war in Vietnam, and then there was division in the United States. And those are presented as two different things. But Ho Chi Minh, before the American War, was training his people. He said, what will happen is the Americans will come to Vietnam, the media will portray what they're doing, and the Americans will see it as unfair, and they'll rise up and they'll cut off support for the war. Ho Chi Minh said that. So the riots, the protests, the anti-war movement in America came out of the mind of Uncle Ho before the Americans even entered the fray. This was People's War. Ho Chi Minh spent 30 years in the West, Brooklyn, Boston, London, Paris, studying the media. He was a writer. And he went back to Vietnam and he said, we're not going to beat America in the field here. We're going to beat them in their living rooms in America.
I'm thinking your dad putting his son on a bus, your brother, to go fight in Vietnam, and you watched that. Mothers sending their boys, wives sending their husbands off to war. You kind of put that into perspective of if they knew what was really going on or how America was approaching it, would your father have been so anxious to put your brother on that bus? I'm sure Chip in the new book had that same experience. His parents surrendered him off to where he goes. And again, the name of the new book is called Precious Freedom, a novel by James Bradley. Talk about that. People in good faith sent their sons off to battle, and would they have done it had they known the truth?
Okay, there's a few different questions in there. Number one,
yes,
my dad said to my brother, you want to enlist in the Marines? He said, 1 year from now, you're going to be in a hole in the ground with somebody that you don't like and you're going to be shot at. And my brother thought, yeah, well, that was World War II, old-fashioned. And a year later, my brother was, in a hole with somebody getting shot at. But so my dad didn't encourage him, but my brother was gung-ho. And Jimmy, we got to go back. See, we're presented the Vietnam War. It's all this like protest and Jimmy Morrison. And no. 1966, when my brother enlisted, the #1 song was the Ballad of the Green Beret. Fighting soldiers from the sky. I remember it up at Bass Lake at our cottage, playing over and over the 45, record. Fighting so we were perfect and we were, muscular. See, Americans are looking at war like it's an NFL game. But if you look at the Americans we sent, very muscled and strong and everything, and you look at the Vietnamese, scrawny with sandals, they won. They had a better strategy. The American government See, if you go back to Vietnam right now, the Americans are the favorite foreigners, and they'll smile and welcome you. And you say, why? And they'll say the same thing. They'll say, Uncle Ho told us not to hate the Americans, that the soldiers like Chip were victims of the government, just like us. Uncle Ho said to the fighting Vietnamese, you don't want to be in the field fighting, and neither does Chip. Neither do the American soldiers want to be here fighting. You're united in that the American government is screwing both of you. So the Vietnamese truly, truly do not hate the Americans. And they feel that they just got, lied to by LBJ, which I show in the book.
I want to talk about that. I have a quote here from Oliver Stone about your book, and let me read it. James Bradley journeyed to Iwo Jima, returned with flags of our fathers. Now James Bradley ventures to Vietnam, brings us precious freedom, where he reveals that if we had known what happened in the 1960s, not what we were told, but what really happened in Vietnam, American mothers would have never sent their children to Iraq and Afghanistan. He said the truth is the best vaccination against great lies. Unpack that a little bit. If moms had known what really happened in 1960s, they would not have sent their kids off to Afghanistan and Iraq. What is it that moms didn't know?
Okay, thank you for that question, and let's unpack that. First of all, that's the great Oliver Stone who fought in Vietnam, the filmmaker who made JFK and all these great films, number one. So thank you, Oliver Stone. Number two, Americans say, yeah, we lost 1975, the helicopters in Saigon. No. What Oliver Stone's talking about my book, Precious Freedom, is that what I reveal is that in the 60s, before the North Vietnamese army came in, before the North Vietnamese army tanks, the civilians pushed the Marines out of their base in Dong Ha, this area that I write about. Civilians. The girl in this book, May, who fights Chip, she's 15 years old. She killed 5 Marines. She's in sandals. She's up in a tree barefoot, long hair, rifle. What is amazing is I show that the Marines were kicked out of this part of Vietnam, not by the North Vietnamese army, but by civilians with old rifles. Why? They had superior techniques called People's War. See, America takes the fighting man, separates him from the family, and then sends them out as a professional. They all live together in barracks and they go out in groups. People's War keeps everybody together. So when the Marines were walking around looking, oh, that's an old grandma with no teeth, she's not an enemy. No, old grandma with the teeth was part of the intelligence network. Ho Chi Minh had millions of Vietnamese, memorizing everything about the Marines as they walked, and would later tell their comrades, the Viet Cong. So the Viet Cong civilians pushed the professional Marines out of Vietnam in the 60s, in 1969. So if we had known what had actually happened, America would not have put up with the war. But we had guys like Walter Cronkite covering for the government. And I mean, I didn't get to Vietnam till I was in my 50s, Jimmy, and I still was bamboozled. There was a North Vietnam, a South Vietnam. The Vietnamese said, Mr. Bradley, we were Vietnamese. The French came and called us Indo-Chinese. I wasn't Indo-Chinese, Mr. Bradley. I was Vietnamese. And then you Americans came and said, you're a South Vietnamese. So, Jimmy, this took me I was stunned. The Vietnamese never saw North and South Vietnam. They never saw a border across the country, the DMZ. All that New York Times, Walter Cronkite maps, North Vietnam invaded South Vietnam. No, I'm from Wisconsin. If Canada came in and cut Wisconsin in two and said, if I go visit my uncle in northern Wisconsin, it's an invasion, I'd be like, no. There's Wisconsin's Wisconsin. And I don't care what Canada says. So there was one Vietnam, and America was fighting for two. It's that simple. But I didn't know that for most of my life. And I show that in this book, Precious Freedom.
Again, the name of the book's Precious Freedom. It's a novel by James Bradley. And I'll give you kind of the overlay. 15-year-old May, who he mentioned, watches a U.S. Marine kill her father And so she goes out and decides she's going to fight back, and she kills other Americans. And then she comes across the Marine who actually killed her father, the character Chip, and you can read the story and how it unfolds from there. I often say we just have propaganda media. This was obviously the case. You mentioned Walter Cronkite back in the Vietnam days. Kind of talk about that. I'm not sure whether the book gets into this, but you had the real story, you had the political story, you had the media story. Why do you think everyone was complicit in telling the fake narrative because they knew the real narrative? Was it just a real fear of communism and they just figured we got to whip everybody into a frenzy? Was it maybe what Eisenhower said, protecting the military-industrial complex? What was LBJ's motivation here?
LBJ's motivation was that he didn't want people saying who lost Vietnam. Why? Because when JFK, LBJ, Hubert Humphrey, Richard Nixon, when they were young senators, the biggest scandal in Washington was who lost China. Americans thought we had China, and then after World War II, when the Chinese took China back from us, it was who lost China. Well, Lyndon Johnson didn't want to lose in Vietnam. He never had a plan to win. You can see in the book, all he talks about is, I'm not going to lose. And he'd throw in more troops and let's do this, let's do that. There was never a coherent plan. But then he put on a tie and he went in front of the cameras and we have a plan to win. Well, we didn't have a plan to win. Look at People's War won the war for the Vietnamese. If you look through the 7,000 pages of the Pentagon Papers, they never debated People's War. They never brought it up. So I'll give you an anecdote. Norman Solomon, an author, went to the Washington Post a few years ago, and he said, the Tonkin Gulf incident never happened. That was baloney. And the Washington Post issues a retraction if they make a mistake. Did you ever retract your coverage of the Tonkin Gulf? And the Washington Post editor says, I don't know. And then he finally finds an old-timer, Murray Martyr, who did most of the coverage. And he said, did the Washington Post ever admit that it was all a lie? And Murray Martyr said, retracted? No, it was all driven by the White House. We weren't going to Vietnam to see the truth. We just wrote down what the White House told us. And he said, if we retracted what we said about the Tonkin Gulf, we'd have to retract 15 years of coverage of Vietnam.
Wow. That's amazing. Precious Freedom is the name of the book. It's a novel by James Bradley. Heading into Veterans Day, I'd really highly recommend you get it. Obviously, you wrote your first book, Flags of Our Fathers, kind of as a commemoration, if you will, and to tell the story a little bit of your father. And this is a kind of a reflection of your brother. When you write these books, this is obviously one that could cause people to go, to kind of wake up to a realization they were lied to by propaganda media. Is that in your motivation? Or are you just writing for pure entertainment? Or are you hoping for some, I guess, revelation and cultural change because of what you write?
None of those things, Jimmy. Honest to God. I caddied for Vince Lombardi, and when we won, we said, how did we win? And when we lost, we asked, how did the other team win? You know what I mean? Yeah. We didn't write books about the Dallas Cowboys, how they lost. We wrote about the Green Bay Packers, but all the American books are about how the Americans lost, how we could have won. And I went to Vietnam and said they won. So this is what was a shocker, Jimmy, of this whole interview. I'm the first and only Western author who seriously went to Vietnam and said to the victors, how did you win? It's just like me going to Bart Starr, who lived 3 cottages down from us when I was a kid, and saying, Mr. Starr, how did you win that game? So I went to Vietnam and I said, how'd you guys win? I wrote it down and it's in this book, Precious Freedom. So I wasn't intending to do anything because I have to follow the story. Yeah. It's just the true story of what happened. And the narrative that we could have won, if only the press, no. And the difference between my dad in World War II and my brother in Vietnam was the leadership. The military changed, and we just had better leadership in World War II. And, the U.S. military hasn't won a war in 80 years. We got to make some changes and get rid of all these general failures.
Yeah. I've been taught as got the undergrad in history, and we were always taught that Vietnam, we could have won it if we wanted to, but politicians in Washington were just tying everybody's hands and not letting us go in and win. Is that a fair statement, knowing what you know now?
No, we dropped chemicals, napalm, poisons, bullets. We dropped more bombs on one little tiny area the size of Delaware that I write about, Quang Tri province. We dropped more bombs right there than we did on Germany and Japan. Wow. We went all out in Vietnam. That was pedal to the metal. We were, the Quezon San battle that's famous with the Marines up on the plateau. We were flying in fresh clothes from the Philippines, water from the Philippines. We went all out, no expenses, and we lost. So that's the excuse. We could have won if only. So I went to Vietnam. Just a minute. Vietnam had just beaten the Japanese, the French. The Americans came in, the Vietnamese beat the Americans, and then the Chinese came in and they beat the Chinese. So it's like 4 NFL champions in a row, and Americans are saying, yeah, but we could have won. No. Yep. And that's the message we got to learn. What happened in Vietnam? If Oliver Stone's right, if we knew what's in this book, American mothers would not send their kids out to war under this type of leadership.
Yeah. Fascinating, and I appreciate it because I always questioned that as a student. You didn't want to tick off your professor in those history classes, because that was I would read and I go, well, it looks like we were pulling out all the stops on them. Oh, we could have done more. And you heard that, and that's kind of a narrative, and that narrative really was just propaganda is all it was.
Yeah. And, I think you said it best, but the book is Precious Freedom, and the title is that way because Ho motivated his people by saying, I know you're getting slaughtered. I know the Americans are napalming. I know they killed your parents, but there's nothing more precious than freedom. And they fought for freedom. They did not fight for an ism.
It's a book that will honor everybody who served in Vietnam, whether maybe you did, maybe you had a parent or an uncle that did. It also gives a new generation understanding of the complex war and the truths that we have not been taught for the most part in America. And again, it's called Precious Freedom. It is a novel by James Bradley, who is the New York Times bestselling author of the book called Flags of Our Fathers, Fly Boys. The list goes on, but he's a fantastic author, and you need to get a copy of this new book, Precious Freedom, a novel. James, I have a feeling I know the answer to this one, but where can people get a copy of this book?
Everywhere. November 11th, it'll be in every bookstore in the world, and Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And before we cut off, Jimmy, I want to salute you for your work in Rwanda. I'm out here in Africa on the island of Mauritius, and I salute you for your work.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'll be over there in about 2 weeks, and I can't wait to get back. But thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. James Bradley, congrats on another fantastic book. I have ordered my copy. I wait for its arrival, and I look forward to it. And Flags of Our Fathers by James Bradley was his first book, but this is called Precious Freedom, the new novel, Precious Freedom by James Bradley, Precious Freedom. James Bradley, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Okay, thank you too, Jimmy.
All right, you got it. But we'll love to talk to him again. Wow, that's fascinating. I can't wait to get the book. I really cannot. As a student of history, and it really, the excerpts that I have seen and the previews I've read, it seems like it's almost like a textbook of everything that we weren't told, but it's told through the lens of a novel. So there's the character development. There's Chip, who we talked about, who's heads off as a Marine, and it goes from there. So, hey, if you want some reading to do, it's going to get cold outside this holiday season. Maybe you've got somebody in your gift list, an uncle, an aunt, a cousin, or somebody that's a student of history. Just loves good reading. This would be a great book for a stocking stuffer, a great book for friends, a great book for your coffee table. I'm telling you, from what I've read, it's a fantastic book, and I can't wait to read it. And it's called Precious Freedom. and it's by James Bradley. So everybody pick up a copy of it, and I think that would be good because, again, we've been told a lot of naughty lies. We've been told some things that were not true. All right, I teased this. First of all, James Lake was supposed to be with us, and I have not seen him pop up time. I want to remind you, if I may, that thousands of earballs will hear this show by the end of the day and the end of the week as it goes live on all the podcast platforms out there. Or go to all the podcast platforms, iHeart, Spotify, and you can learn more exactly iHeart, Spotify, etc. And download it, and you can listen to the audio portion of this show only. And again, I want to plug again, Precious Freedom by James Bradley, previous guest. And if you're just joining us, go back and listen to that interview. I think you'll find it quite fascinating indeed. All right, let me do 3 more stories, and we'll do this meat roulette portion of the show. I said we're going to have a couple of stories that tie together the topic of Jellly Roll, Kraft mac and cheese, and Oreo cookies. Well, let's start with this one. Let's start with a Jellly Roll story. Jellly Roll, the big singer, some of you may be fans of him. He has been on a massive health kick over the last 2 years. He's now dropped well over 200 pounds. At his heaviest, Jellly Roll weighed about 500 pounds, admitted he could barely make it down his driveway without getting winded. That was his wake-up call, but since then he's hit a few major milestones. He performed at the WWE Super Slam, and it was the first time he was under 300 pounds since middle school. These days, he looks so good that people have even given him a nickname. Have you heard this? Jellly Roll's new nickname is becoming Veggie Roll. Didn't know that. And his new goal is shirtless on Men's Health cover by 2027. I don't know if I like that idea, but that's his goal, and God bless him for his goal. He wants to be shirtless on Men's Health cover by 2027, but his new nickname has become Veggie Roll. Another story talking about Kraft mac and cheese. Anybody like the Kraft mac and cheese in a box? A lot of people are picky about the mac and cheese. Some people make adult mac and cheese, kind of a gourmet. Some people like it right out of the box. If you're under 10, you're not so picky, but if you get older, you're a little bit more picky about your mac and cheese. Well, Kraft is selling a new type of mac and cheese. They're selling an apple pie flavored mac and cheese this holiday season. What is wrong with us? That's just wrong. Kraft says it's a comforting taste you love, now with a shockingly deliciously savory, sweet pairing. It's packaged with cheesy apple cinnamony goodness, they say. Each box includes sauce mix with the seasoning, and you just need milk and margarine or butter. And you can have an apple pie flavored mac and cheese. You're not going to see it in stores. It's online exclusive that's available for a limited time. You can buy a single package at Walmart.com for $1.48 or a package of 3 for $4.44. And so apple pie flavored mac and cheese. There's something wrong with that. Speaking of something wrong with that, here's the Oreo cookie story. You ready for this? In favor of the holidays, you haven't even fully digested your Snickers bars from the Halloween hunting, have you? And yet now we're on to the next holiday, and the next holiday is Thanksgiving. And so Oreos has decided a new special edition tin of cookies that taste like Thanksgiving foods. You won't be able to get them in stores also. You're going to get them online. It's 6 different flavors, and each tin comes with 2 of each. So you get the tin of these Thanksgiving Oreo cookies, and instead of the traditional Oreos, the flavors are you get 2 of each of these: turkey and stuffing, sweet potato, creamed corn, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, and caramel apple pie. You can order the tin if you're so inclined to do so for just $20 plus shipping through Oreo.com. The question is, do you really want an Oreo cookie that tastes like turkey and stuffing? Do you really want an Oreo cookie that tastes like creamed corn? No, I don't want that any more than I want a mac and cheese that tastes like apple pie. But if you want it, Oreo.com is... I blame this on Starbucks, the pumpkin spice thing. Everything had to be pumpkin spice. I mean, your bathroom spray had to become pumpkin spice. Your latte had to become pumpkin spice. Everything had to become pumpkin spice. And they said, oh, Americans like really bad flavors, right? They really love the flavors. So let's make other. Why would you harm the Oreo cookie? That's just wrong. I think communists, the same people that redecorated and rebranded the Cracker Barrel, I think have taken over Oreo and Kraft, because this is just wrong. American iconic food is being tortured and done wrong by really, really, really bad people. Shame on you. But I might try one. If somebody, I'm not going to spend it, but if someone bought Oreos, or if you got a cookie, that's my cookie. Three Musketeers, my candy bar. Oreo is my cookie. Thank you, and you're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to do the meme roulette portion of the show. We go around the globe. We go to China, all in China, and what we do is we steal memes. We steal things. We scour the internet for memes, and we hope that you enjoy this portion of the program. Before we do it, this portion of the program brought to you by Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com. Listen, now is the time to start getting ready for 2026. I know it seems like a long ways away. You want to get through Thanksgiving. You want to get through Christmas. You want to get through the in-laws. You want to get through that vacation, that holiday. You want to hit your year-end budget. You're worried about that. Listen, if you're thinking about sometime next year, that you want to sell a house, buy a house, really now's the time to start having that conversation. It's Strategy with Sherry, homeswithsherry.com, because a lot of folks say, well, I want to list it in May or June, July. Well, Sherry can kind of give you that analysis of, there's a difference in approach, different in strategy, could be a different price. It could be a lot of different things happen if you hit the window of 2026 selling early as opposed to later. Right? There's just a lot of variables that can be out there. Interest rates are obviously coming down. A lot of folks really start looking for homes right after the Super Bowl. That's the final holiday. You got Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then the Super Bowl. And after that, people are like, let's do the spring cleaning. Let's get on. Let's get some sunshine going. Let's move forward. And that really actually happens. So you want to be ready to hit that first selling window if you can. And Sherry can help you get that done. Maybe you want to wait for whatever reason. You don't want to buy or sell until closer to the summertime, kids in school, whatever. She gets that as well. But there is a strategy that goes in play with when you list your home and how to get it ready. So listen, if you want to hit that first selling window, you need to be talking to Sherry now. And she can kind of tell you what you might want to do. She can help you with the pricing of it. And don't forget, she's just a fantastic lady. She was there for the ribbon cutting of our Legacy Christian Academy in Rwanda. She gives a portion of all of her proceeds and commissions to a charity that you direct to. So she'll take money out of her pocket that she earned from your transaction, her commission, and she will put it into a charity of your choice, take a portion of that. And she also has special care and an affinity for those people that are caretakers, those people that take care of their aging parents, or maybe you have a parent's house you need to kind of move, and parents are moving off to assisted living or a different situation. She can kind of help you with that burden that suddenly you're strapped with this house. And sometimes that's a house that's not even in the area and you're trying to figure it out. She can listen, talk to Sherry. Homes will get more for their house, but they had to do some repairs that have gone neglected. It was a senior parent, and there was actually some sewage problems. They had to dig up part of the. She kind of orchestrated that because the people in charge of the house were still not in the area, so she kind of helped that family do it to get that home ready for her parents to be able to sell it. Homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Reach out to her. And again, if you're thinking 2026 anytime, maybe now, but maybe 2026, you're thinking of real estate, homeswithsherry.com. Sherry Cree, always great to hear from her. We'll get her. She's been traveling a little bit. She'll be back on the show real soon with us on a Friday, but homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. All right, let's do it. Round and round the globe we go. It's stolen meme time. So where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Here we go. Read this. Let this soak in. This is fantastic. There's no vax for HIV after 40 years of research. No vax for cancer after more than 100 years of research. No vax for the common cold. Yet a virus mysteriously appears within 12 months. A vax is found by the 4 pharma companies. All within 1 week, they find a mysterious vaccination. Still hadn't vaccinated for the HIV and vaccine for cancer. No, common cold, no, but yeah. Look, we got this new one. Oh, look in there. We just came up with a vaccine. The caption of this from We Steal the Memes, it says, yeah, but nothing was planned. Not a thing was planned. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. It's a Mamdani meme. Ladies and gentlemen, Zohran Mamdani plans to erect sculpture honoring Muslim marriages next to the Statue of Liberty. Wow. Producer Chad did that one. I did not. Don't send me the letters on that one. I wonder if that's made of copper like the Statue of Liberty is. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from? No one knows. Mom Donnie announces his plan to blame racism after his policies fail. That's probably true. It's going to be someone else's fault, not his. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. The Babylon Bee. Yeah, we do know that one. Surgery was the right call, says doctor, while handing you a bill for $450,000. Yeah, Obamacare really working out for America, isn't it? Really working out well. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. Me, I'm hungry. Mom says, go make a sandwich. Me, I don't want a sandwich. Mom said, then you ain't hungry. That's how I was raised right there. Yeah, that's how I was raised. Probably a backhand in the middle of that. There it is. China. When you hear the gong from China, you know we have searched the world over, and that's all the memes we could find for the day. A lot of you are chiming in on the Oreo cookies. Someone taste the Oreos and get back with me. Stacy says, I'm scared too. Our Lois says, I'll pass on those Oreos. Jeff asked a great question about those Thanksgiving-flavored Oreos. Do you dip them in gravy? Listen, I've told producer Chad, as a Southern boy, anything can be dipped in gravy and anything can be fried. Jeff says also, newsflash, a hungry man actually made that happen when dessert ran into the mac. I'm good. Not going to try the mac and cheese flavored apple pie flavored mac and cheese. I'm just glad that I have refrained from visualizing and yet also communicating that if mac and cheese, apple pie flavored mac and cheese, there's a certain scene in the movie American Pie that would be very messy if they redid that with mac and cheese flavored like apple pie. Leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone, Jimmy. Don't do it. Leave it alone, I say. Leave it alone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here on the program. Still got some stories I haven't gotten to this week that are on my show sheet. I'll get to them tomorrow, the Thursday edition of the show. Hey, don't forget our charity work, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.org. I really appreciate you hopping here into the show with us. I appreciate your conversation. I appreciate all the comments, and I appreciate your donations at riverspromise.org. I'll be about 2-3 weeks away. I'll be in Rwanda, and I look forward to that journey as always. And I look forward to taking some love to the kids and shoes. And we're going to start the shoe drive here real soon. Start setting aside your $25. $25 is going to buy a kid a pair of shoes. And we replace shoes at least once a year, but the Christmas season is when we really go all out. The kids get excited, and they know what they're getting for Christmas at our big Christmas party. Hundreds of kids, hundreds of pairs of shoes. They all know they're getting shoes. And they're excited because shoes there are it's some people don't have them, let's just say. And until we came along, a lot of these kids never wear shoes. We've run across kids that are wearing the tops of shoes. The bottoms have literally worn out, and they're not sponsored by us, and they literally still keep that top part of the shoe, even though the bottom is basically gone. The sole of the shoe's gone, because that shoe is such a commodity that they figure at least half of it's there, so I might as well keep wearing it. That's the world we're living in. So shoes are a drive. We'll be launching that, but $25. Buy a kid a pair of shoes, and we'd appreciate your participation with that. Ladies and gentlemen, until we meet again tomorrow morning, good Lord willing, the creeks don't rise, and everybody gathers back here. Podbean, Apple Podcasts, you know the routine. We're going to be there. Thousands of people, thousands of earballs will hear this show by the end of the day. Thousands and thousands by the end of the week, and we appreciate everybody participating. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. Just my name on all the other platforms, Jimmy Lakey. Until we meet again, I mean this. May God bless you. May God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey. Peace. I'm out of here.